Hey, everybody, welcome to the Be That Lawyer podcast. I am your host, Steve Fretzin. If you are listening for the first time, welcome, welcome. If you are a longtime listener, I think we're, I don't know, 475 shows in. And if you've been picking up on all those, you're probably the smartest guy around because we do nothing but educate you on being the best lawyer, marketing, business development, time management, scaling, you name it. We've got guests that have covered those grounds. And today I've got one of my favorite lawyers and friends, Russell. How you doing, man?
I'm very good, thanks.
We've had, I just before we even get into the show, I just want to mention how impressed I am not only with what you've done business wise, but even more importantly, how much time you spend with your boys. I'm kind of stalking you on Facebook, and I
Mhm.
just observe you're at a concert. I think we both went to Pearl Jam, and I see you doing all these activities with your kids, and I just want to tell you that not everybody gets to do that, and or has the ability or the flexibility to do that. So kudos to you on that. Why is that? I mean, obviously that's important to you. What's your motivator there? Obviously,
I
loving your
mean, it's
kids,
all
but
quality time versus quantity time. I don't want to be like, I'm not watching a TV show with my kids. If it's Saturday night and I can go to Pearl Jam and like one of them's into music, that's what I'm
yeah,
going to do.
yeah, right. So there's quality time, and you're making the best of it. Really cool. Um, so everybody, as you guys know, we love to start off with a quote of the show, and this one's a doozy. And I love the author of this. One bad apple ruins the whole bunch. That's an old timey type of saying, and then the person that you quoted as saying that is some Apple guy.
Yeah.
So
What do I know?
somebody was into apples and then noticed
Yeah.
that there was a spoiled one that ruined the whole bunch. So, but why specifically that quote versus all the other quotes? And welcome to the show, by the way.
Yeah. I've last time I was before you talking with you on the podcast, it was like 2021 maybe, and I had like one associate and two paralegals, and now I'm at six associates and four paralegals, and I've most everyone's great that I have right now, but I've definitely found that like the people work and follow the cues of the person that's doing the least for the
Yeah,
most part.
yeah,
One of the advantages of working remote is that that person who's doing the least isn't front and center, but also it's a challenge because the person who's doing the most isn't front and center, and so then you have to rely on a lot of data to follow up with people. But like I don't know if it's your business, like why are you tolerating mediocrity? Why are you tolerating something that's bad? It's just going to seep into everything. And then we all
yeah.
know other firms that are like that, where it's like, well, that's how they do things. It's kind of screwed up. I'm sure nobody wanted it to be screwed up, but it just slowly developed like a cancer, kind of.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's hard to, change is harder. Like there's people that they, even though you're not happy with them, they're still handling some level of work. And then what we're going to talk about today, maybe a good segue, not right this minute, but is, it is so hard to get new talent today that maybe it's better putting up with, a donkey than going out and trying to, put the effort in to find a thoroughbred, as my friend Ross Alper says. So, that may be a part of it, but again, I think as we're going to talk and find out, that it ends up being a big misstep and mistake. But let's take a step back. So you mentioned a little bit about your firm and the growth you've had. Take us back to as far back as you want to go about why you became a lawyer, and kind of give us leading up to today.
Sure. I was a computer programmer and I was not very good. So I realized I had to do something else. And so I was good at tests. So I took the LSAT. I thought law school would be fun. Then I graduated with great timing in 2006 when the economy was going down the toilet. I worked for a guy on the west side of Chicago doing criminal work and running around. And then I ended up doing all the divorce work for the firm. And then subsequent to that, I left 2 years later, started my own firm, was doing divorce work and all sorts of things. And I also I speak fluent Spanish. And so I was working with that community. And then I just more and more divorces come in. And like law is kind of a pie eating contest where first prize is more pie. And the pie that I was eating was divorce. So I got
Yeah, nice. So you push your chips in, and you're someone who has multiple offices. And by the way, everybody, Russell Knight is of the law office of Russell Knight. And you have Chicago and you have Naples, Florida. And I always found that interesting to have two offices. Is that because you wanted the lifestyle of living down in Naples?
at the time, yeah, I was like
Okay.
planning on living down there. Then the pandemic happened. And then as you mentioned, I have kids and the education in the northern suburbs of Chicago cannot be beat. And so I moved back for education purposes. And I don't know, just like I'm kind of from here. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And, nothing, again, people in Florida, but I know they're having some tough times with all the storms coming through and flood insurance and all the reasons that just
Yep.
making Chicago sound so not so cold anymore, if you will. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers who are solos that are so terrified of that first hire, paralegal or associate, and there's people that have one or two associates, and that step to grow is such a big deal. And why do you find that lawyers generally struggle with that step and finding good talent from the get-go?
I think it's you got to think of it from like the possible associate or the paralegal's perspective. Like they know they're going to get a check. They know that. And they're not an automaton that's like, well, this person pays more, $10,000 more than that. They want a lot of security. And one solo with nobody else, that doesn't seem very secure. And even one solo with one associate and one paralegal, which is usually what people get to, even that doesn't seem that secure. I always call that like you said, it's not really a firm. It's a Batman and Robin sidekick sort of
Yeah.
situation. So what my experience was is that because I always had paralegals, like one or two, and then they'd be like kids who were also like law clerks effectively. Then I had one associate, and that was okay, but it was just like a sidekick, to be honest. And I didn't start making, to be honest, real money until I had a second associate. And my experience is that uh, once you have the second associate, you one, you're really just achieving the scale economies of scale where you can make some real money, and you're not just constantly mentoring someone and losing out on your own billable hours. And then once you have more than one or two people, the third or the fourth or the fifth person is like, oh, okay, well, that's must be a stable place to work if they can keep the lights on and keep everybody paid. And they're probably right. So my experience, like I definitely had one person tell me, like, "Oh, I didn't know you had all these people working for you because you didn't have them on your website." And I realized how dumb that was in my about page, that I didn't have headshots of everybody and their bios so they could see that it's just not me and some ragtag crew. It's, six other people that
Yeah.
are significant experience.
Yeah. You're showing that this is a real firm and not just a solo operation.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, people know, especially like, do clients know? I don't know, but people who work in the industry, they absolutely know, and they want to
Yeah.
work for a better place every time.
Okay. And in your opinion, then, is it better to try to find someone that has experience doing it in bringing in that person with potentially their different processes and systems and ideas about things, or is it better to take someone that maybe has very little experience, bring them in and mentor them up and get them on your page right away? Which do you like both?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I've hired people out of school. I probably would not do it again.
Okay.
It's a learning curve as a lawyer. I'm in family law, which is not rocket science. It takes about 2 years to achieve the proper level of independence where you're not doing check-ins a couple times a day.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's time that I lose. And frankly, like the management science says that you can only manage about, 4 to 6 people, and I'm at 10, so I definitely can't do that. So people who have experience, that's fine. And lawyers are expected to know how to do things and do things their own way. We have a whole bunch of systems and processes about how to do anything from calendaring. Whenever people have to work together, like calendaring or putting stuff into Dropbox and how you organize the file, we're very strict about that. But like that's not rocket science either. So the short story is I would rather hire somebody with experience. What's the big deal to pay somebody 10, 20, 30, $40,000 more when they have, 2, 5, 10 years experience and they're effectively independent.
Yeah.
Again, you're buying into stability. So if you can pay them for that level of independence if they're buying into your stability. I found that to be um it's usually where you want to be. But again, like beggars can't be choosers. When you're a solo, you're probably gonna have to take somebody right out of school,
Yeah.
and you're probably gonna have to spend 2 hours of your day. We're hoping this person was going to free up 2 hours of your day, but now you're spending 2 hours of your day telling them how to do something, reviewing their work. I don't know. I kind of think that law is it's a great business when you've got 5+ people, and it's tough from 1 through 4.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I mean, from the show, in my own knowledge, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. The idea too is if you can bring in software and technology and processes, or maybe bring in a second lawyer who does enjoy the management, has the time, maybe they're not into business development, maybe that those are things that might, like, I don't know if you could go back in time and do it again. Are those things that you would have, or maybe you had those? I don't know.
Do have a few people like that where they enjoy working with others and fostering their growth. They have one young lady, Rebecca Day, who was a paralegal for 15 years and then went to law school, and she's effectively in charge of all the paralegals, and she runs it like a business. It's like
Yeah.
it's tight as a drum. These paralegals are working with her and working for her, and they all follow the rules. And that solves a million problems for me, and I pay her proportionately because it solves problems.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to do something similar for to get lawyers all on the same page, but lawyers need a lot more flexibility. So I'm not sure if that's totally the direction I want to go. And I don't know. I'm probably at a weird cusp stage here with like a staff of 10, because you're probably right. As a staff of 15 or 20, if I get there, I'd probably have to be purely into leadership and business development. And these other things would have to be shifted off to other people.
Yeah, I think that's the big move is like how many hats are you wearing, Russell, and at what point do you start taking them off and handing them out, like, having someone in charge of your staff or having someone that, stop doing the work. Like there's a lot of people I interview on the show that, they get out of the billable work and they just focus on the business and focus on the rainmaking, and then everyone else kind of takes their role. A question I want to ask you is experience with recruiters. That's a touchy point for a lot of lawyers. Some have had amazing experiences in building staff with recruiters and paying their fees. Others less so. What's your kind of take on that?
I don't think that they're expensive, although it sounds like, $20,000 to hire somebody. Like, so what? Like, what's $20,000 for an attorney? Like, that's just do the math. That's like 40 hours of work at like however many dollars an hour. It's 1 week. Like, so what?
Yeah,
Usually they should be charging, I think in other businesses, they charge like the first several months, maybe the first year even. So I don't think that they're expensive. My only caveat would be is the type of person, and I can talk about how I hire, but the type of person who's works for a recruiter, the potential hire is probably kind of bouncy. Like they're looking for the next, if they were looking for the next thing before they met you, they'll probably be looking for the next thing after they're working for you.
yeah.
So, but whatever, nothing lasts forever. That's what I tell everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's a shelf life to how long most attorneys are going to work at a particular firm and be opportunistic. And again, I think that's something we want to, yeah, if we can keep them and build a culture and make them happy, and they've got all the things that they need and want. But that's doesn't change the fact that people move on and I've had multiple changes in my career, and so have you. So that's just life. The the question that I want to ask you then is how have you found what have you learned, and how are you now acquiring top talent? How are you getting to the point where you've got six attorneys from originally one or two? I mean, what's been your process for that?
Well, initially I would like put an ad on like law school, whatever those hiring websites were.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
don't
like
do
the
that
bar
anymore.
associations
Yeah.
and yeah, law schools.
But now I'm like really online, and like
Yeah,
I'm constantly I pay social media people so that I'm constantly on LinkedIn, I'm constantly on Instagram, and I everything that the firm does, I put on the LinkedIn or Facebook. And then people, like I know some people are probably interested in working with me, like they'll like the posts. Like it's pretty transparent. And then you have a conversation with them. You say like, "Well, how's it going?" And it's never going good. They're either in like some horrible firm or they are on their own and they're drowning. And you say like, "It's hard." I say just what I told you. Like it sucks. You can't get out of it step by step because hiring one paralegal, hiring one associate doesn't solve your problems. It just buys you new problems. And then until you're at like five or six, it's just more problems. And then they're like, "Oh yeah," but like no one can imagine themselves going from like I certainly couldn't from like one to two to like five to six. It sort of seems insurmountable. And then you ask them like, "Well, what do you make?" And like maybe if you made the same amount, but I found you the paralegal and like I got you most of the cases, what would that be an improvement in life or not? And they're not going to say yes, hire me. They're going to wait for until they have a very good, no, very terrible, no good, very bad day, and they're going to call you up and say like maybe we can talk about that,
yeah,
and then they're going to be ready. So the people that are good that you'd want to have work for you, they're not ready to, you can't expect them to work for you tomorrow. It's going to happen in 3 to 6 months or
Okay.
maybe a year, and just keep it open. I would be like super friendly with people and let them see that like you have like a modicum of success. We do one really cool thing every quarter at my firm, and we put it on, Facebook and LinkedIn, and it blows up because other people aren't doing it. Other firms are like, "Oh, we got pizza for the break room." Like for fall, we did a farm to table dinner at a farm, and it was beautiful. It was so cool. For winter, we're all going to Naples as like a firm retreat.
Yeah.
For spring, I plan on like renting this entire suite for a concert, and putting stuff up like that shows people like we are having fun, we're successful, and maybe it would be kind of cool if you were with us too.
Yeah.
So I hope
But
it's the message across.
well, I want to tell you that I've done, as I mentioned, like 475 shows, and there's been 5 to 10 things that have been said that are so important and brilliant that it needs to be restated. And what you just said is so critical. Not just the culture part. I want to go back before that. Law firms aren't thinking about recruiting openly and all the time as a part of or function of growth, as a part and function. Like they have hours that they need to fill, then they start recruiting and they use a recruiter or whatever and they fill it. You're suggesting recruiting should happen all the time. You should be putting out posts. You should be starting conversations. It's not something that is done here and there. It's done as a part of the growth plan for the business in general. And I think that's a big missing piece for a lot of big firms, small firms, and mid-market firms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just want to just make sure everyone understands that your website, your LinkedIn, getting conversations with lawyers that you think might be a good fit for your firm, that could be more important than actually going out and getting business. Because going out and getting business is great, but you need people to do that work. And so that ongoing recruiting piece
Yeah.
is critical. Yeah. And so then you mentioned the culture and the retain. What other things are you doing to develop and retain people? So even though you know they may leave down the road, at least you're going to have goodwill. Maybe they'll send you stuff, but more importantly, you're hoping that you can work them to stay long term.
Well, what I don't understand is why almost nobody does any development that is not in-house, that's out of house. For example, for family law attorneys, like family law attorneys are notoriously bad litigators because the rules get bent all the time. There is a organization called the National Family Law Trial Institute, NFLTI, out of Houston, Texas, and they do a week-long trial advocacy class that is minimum like 14 hours a day, and they're not nice. They yell at you. And it's fun. And I've sent 2 attorneys there, and they're not thrilled to do it. No one would do it voluntarily. It just wouldn't happen. But I'm like, guess what? You're going. Both of
Okay.
them that came back were like, whoa, I am like so much better, and I see the forest from the trees, and now I have an idea of like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and my strategy is so much better. And that is something that I know for a fact, like other firms don't do it. It costs about $10,000. You lose at least another 10,000 for them not billing that week. But it's something, it's just an investment in their career that I think is, one, it's easier than trying to teach them trial skills yourself. And two, it's like a big vote of confidence in them. Like I believe that these people that I'm sending are not only good lawyers, but can be really great lawyers.
Yeah.
And I hope that they, think that I hope they notice that vote of confidence and sort of interpret that as culture, be like, no, this is a place where we do really good work and my boss believes in me, and and he invests in me, and I presume he'll invest me in the future. That, and like there's a million things. Like if you're in any kind of litigation, you can send your associate to Miami to take a deposition class, and then they can, hang out on the beach the day before, the day after. Like I don't know why nobody would do that. It's not especially expensive. It's really nice, and like most people will walk away from it having learned something. And again, it's probably more important is the signal that it's a vote of confidence in their potential more than anybody. But I just don't see a lot of people doing that, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what you're saying is like you're investing in people in their future, and that plays a role in the culture that you're developing in not only how you met them and build trust, but how you bring them in and train them, and then making sure that you're investing in them. And then also from a social and cultural standpoint, and from an advocacy for them to grow as lawyers. So you're kind of covering a lot of ground there. Anything else that, like, if you had to give, tips to lawyers who were solos, like to say, hey, this is how you get from here to from where you are now to where I am, what would you say?
Uh, Stop being cheap.
Okay.
That's the number one thing that I think you see a dollar come in and you're like, oh, wouldn't that dollar be nice to be have in my pocket? That dollar ain't your dollar. That dollar's the firm's dollar. And that dollar needs to get spent on people that ain't you. And it's tough because like when you really start making money, you're like, oh man, the gross numbers are huge, but the bigger you get, the smaller the margins get. And I think it's tough to turn down the green-eyed monster and be like, well, shouldn't I have all this? No, spend it on your staff, spend it on some kind of development, buy somebody $200 worth of flowers for their birthday that's on your staff, little things like that. Like just quit being cheap.
Yeah. I mean, I find that in my space too, Russell, with lawyers who, look, my fees are a drop in the bucket for lawyers
Yeah.
that are building $1 million plus books after working with me. And I still feel like lawyers really struggle investing in themselves or investing in building something. They just want to take the money and use it or spend it or whatever. It's pretty unusual.
That's the nature of it. Being a lawyer, like you have to focus a lot on being a lawyer, and you don't focus a lot on being a business person.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I think people get stuck in like an intellectual eddy where they're like, "Well, I learned all the rules of evidence, and so now I'm done." No, you're not. Now you have to learn how to hire, retain, get talk to people like you to learn how to build business.
Yeah.
It never ends. So
Yeah.
you sleep dead.
Yeah, I think that you're making some great points. It's like the business of law, it's something that you have to learn. It's something that you have to recognize there's an investment in learning and executing and finding good talent. And I think a lot of what you shared today gives people, hope that there are ways of doing things where maybe they don't make the same mistakes that have been made by solos for years. Let's wrap it up with our game-changing book of the show, and that's Unreasonable Hospitality. I want to say that's been brought up
Oh,
on the show before, but yeah,
I hope so. It's amazing. So we are in the professional services business. Services. We are of its service. This guy, Will Guidara, I think his last name is, he writes the story of how he worked for all these restaurants and managed these restaurants and how people walk into the restaurant and they're like, oh, I'm here to get a steak and a glass of wine, and then I'm going to leave. Anything beyond that is a gigantic bonus. So people walk into my office and they're like, well, I'm in this horrible situation. Hopefully I have a divorce and I don't have too much trauma associated with it. But anything else that's a bonus. So uh, we try to be really empathetic throughout the whole process, to really touch base, I always tell people I'm so sorry going through this, all of that. But then at the end, for example, if I like you, I like most of my clients, and I will send them like a gift basket at the end. I'm like, hey, it's probably an hour's worth of work that, of expense, but just say like, I know you're moving on to the next chapter of your life. I hope that it's great. And I hope things go well. And people respond to it because the rest of the process is terrible. Like if you ever meet somebody who's been divorced and you ask them, who's your divorce lawyer? They will have one of two answers typically. I don't remember. Can you believe it? They just
yeah,
they're like,
yeah,
here's that guy. Or number two is, oh, I hated him or I
yeah,
hated her. It was an awful time. So why can't you do something like buy somebody some flowers if you hear like something? Because we hear about a lot of tragedy. Like, we hear their parent dies or something. Why can't you buy
yeah,
somebody some flowers, deliver it? Why can't you get them something? Why can't you send a note on personal stationery with your name on it to say, hey, I hope everything's well. Like, it was a pleasure helping you. But the idea is that unreasonable hospitality isn't a checklist. It's a vibe, a way of life. And it's a way to build a culture, actually. But in professional services, I think you'll see it everywhere if you start going to like nice hotels or nice restaurants, and because it's sort of the universe winking at you.
yeah. I had that experience in Trulux in Naples. I remember very clearly. I asked where the washroom is, and someone said, "Oh, let me show you." And they walked me to the washroom, which I'm like, that's never happened before. And I didn't need, and then they went in the bathroom with me. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't do that, but
Made a friend.
that made it really good service. No, but the point is like, it's the little things that we can do beyond what expectations are that are memorable and where people are going to want to recommend you and refer you. And I think my late great father, Larry Lawyer, did that very well. And built a huge reputation for himself as being, consigliere beyond just someone who provided legal services. So, great book, and thank you for that share. As we wrap up, want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, of course, Law Her podcast. Check out Sonia on that show; it's amazing, helping women to really take it to the next level as legal practitioners, and of course, Rankings.io, which is in the personal injury space, helping people attract and get business in the door. Russell, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to work for you, they want to talk with you, they want to network with you, what are the best digits for them to reach out?
I'm super online. Just find one of my websites, and there's always a contact me page, or you can email me at russell@rdklegal.com. That'd be great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate, and you're in one of my roundtables. I don't know if you want to just share, I'm putting you on the spot totally right now by doing this, but just like, what's the value of being in a room full of other rainmakers?
You meet people that you wouldn't meet otherwise. And then like when I have a question, will always go to one of the other gentlemen in the roundtable because he seems to know everybody. And I've also it's 5 people. If you're a lawyer, someone is going to refer you business. Like it's happened to me. You get your money back at the very least.
Yeah.
So
thanks, man. Appreciate it. So check out the Rainmaker Roundtable on my website, fretzin.com, everybody. If you're doing $1 million plus and you want to network and hang out with other rainmakers, check it out. Thanks so much, man. I think this is our second show together. So
it is, yeah.
You're a 2-timer, if you know what I mean. But just sharing your wisdom is always great. And you've built a lovely practice. And I love the fact that you're able to build something super profitable and also, again, have the balance of spending time with the family. That's really important.
All right. Thanks. Nice seeing you. Have a nice day.
All right. Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for spending time with Russell and I today on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.